It started as a quiet nudge. You know the kind, not loud, not dramatic, just a soft tug that something's off. Daniel had been working late more than usual. At first, I didn't question it. I mean, who am I to complain about ambition? But then his hugs started to feel distracted, and even his stories over dinner came pre-edited, like someone had cut the reel. So I thought, maybe I'll surprise him, cheer him up, take him out to dinner, something sweet, simple. I drove to his office that evening, heart half full, half cautious. It was one of those cool nights that makes you zip your jacket a little higher and question your own footsteps. I parked across the street, spotting his building under that usual sterile glow. But what caught my eye wasn't the architecture. It was him, standing outside, laughing, with her. She was younger, confident, a little too close, her hand brushing his arm like it belonged there. And then, he saw me. His smile dropped so fast I almost felt it in my gut. He waved, stiff, guilty, like he was trying to erase something midair. He walked over, tension hanging off his shoulders like a wet coat. I kept my voice calm, steady. "Who was that?" I asked. He shrugged, the kind of shrug that avoids eye contact. "Just a coworker. We were discussing a project, nothing important." But I know Daniel, I know his tells. And this was a lie with a heartbeat. I smiled. Not the kind that forgives, the kind that buys time. My hands were still wrapped around the bag of takeout, but inside something had shifted. I wasn't heartbroken, not yet. I was curious in the way a woman becomes when the math stops adding up. He kissed my cheek, mumbled something about being surprised to see me, and I nodded like I believed him. That's when I felt it. Not anger, not pain, just clarity. And the first spark of a plan. We drove home in silence, the kind of silence where every radio commercial suddenly feels too loud. I asked him about his project over dinner, laughed when I was supposed to, poured the wine like everything was normal. He relaxed, too easily. That told me everything I needed to know. He thought he'd dodged it, thought I was still that woman who trusted without hesitation. But something in me had changed. I'd seen behind the curtain, and now I couldn't unsee it. Later that night, after he fell asleep, I sat in the dark with my laptop. No tears, no dramatics, just quiet fingers typing in quiet rage. I pulled up his company's staff page first, scanning photo after photo. She wasn't there, no trace. Next, I checked his calendar, something I hadn't done in years. No major deadlines. No late meetings marked. Just vague placeholders and empty blocks. That's when it hit me. If I wanted answers, I'd have to dig with care. And I would. The next morning, I kissed him goodbye like always, packed his lunch, even reminded him to grab his umbrella. Light drizzle, chance of storms. He smiled, told me he'd be late again. I nodded, pretending not to notice how easily the lie left his lips. But this time, I took note. Of the time, of the tone, of everything. I opened a notebook and started a quiet inventory. Dates, times, excuses. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was observant. Over the next few days, I became someone else. Or maybe just a version of me I hadn't met yet. The kind who pays attention to voicemail timestamps, who notices the scent of hotel soap lingering on a collar, who learns to keep her face neutral while her mind races like wildfire. I played the part of the loyal wife so well, even I almost believed it. And while he crafted stories, I crafted something too. A timeline, a strategy, a trap with patience as the bait. Then came the receptionist. Sweet girl, new, easy to chat with. I dropped by one afternoon with a batch of homemade cookies and a gentle smile. Just being friendly, just making conversation. People underestimate women like me. They forget what we've seen, what we've learned to hide. But I wasn't just passing time anymore. I was gathering puzzle pieces. And soon, they'd start to fit, one by one, into a picture he never thought I'd see coming. That night I made lasagna from scratch, the kind he loved, the kind I hadn't cooked in months. He walked through the door with that tired look he'd been wearing lately, and I greeted him with a kiss and a glass of red. "Rough day?" I asked, just like I used to. He smiled, a little too quickly. I watched him relax, like guilt had been sitting on his shoulders, and my dinner invitation had wiped it clean. He thought he was in the clear. That was the point. We talked about his project over dinner, or rather, I asked and he talked. Vague, scattered details, names I'd never heard before. I nodded, offered polite curiosity. It was a performance, really. Mine and his, both. But only one of us knew it was theater. When he laughed, I laughed. When he toasted to teamwork, I clinked my glass. Inside, though, I was studying every word, every pause, every twitch behind his eyes. He was so at ease, so proud of his lie. Later, when he fell asleep, that deep, careless kind of sleep only the oblivious enjoy, I got to work again. I scrolled through archived company newsletters, project reports, anything with a name, a photo, a mention. Still no sign of her. Whoever she was, she didn't exist in his professional world. But I knew better. Ghosts don't show up in the daylight. They slip between cracks. So I decided to stop looking where she should be and start noticing where she wasn't. The days that followed became a quiet operation. I kept the mask on, smiled in the mornings, packed his lunch, kissed him goodbye. But every time he said, "I might be late tonight," I didn't flinch. I simply wrote it down. I bought a new planner, one with gold edges and thick pages, and began tracking him like he was a storm on the horizon. Monday, Thursday, then again the next Monday. A pattern started to form, not just in time, but in energy. He always came home on those nights humming something under his breath, a little lighter, a little brighter. He didn't smell like the office. He didn't carry the stress of late meetings, just a strange calm, the kind a man wears when he thinks he's getting away with something. I asked fewer questions, gave him more space, and he mistook that for trust. He didn't notice I had started staying up a little later, watching him a little closer, learning him all over again. And that's when I knew I needed help. Not a detective, just access, insight. And that's where the receptionist came in. Her name was Jamie, 20-something, eager to connect, always complimenting my hair or my bag. So I leaned in, brought coffee when I knew she'd be alone, shared stories about my crazy schedule and my forgetful husband. She laughed, nodded, let details slip. People always do when they feel seen. And slowly she started filling in the blanks. Jamie mentioned things without realizing their weight, like how Daniel often left earlier than he said, or how he was always with the same woman. The one with the navy heels and perfect hair. She didn't know her name, just that she wasn't from Daniel's company. "Maybe from the third floor?" she guessed, sipping her iced coffee. I nodded, kept the conversation light, but inside I felt the pieces shifting into place. My gut hadn't been wrong. I just hadn't had the full picture. Yet. I started checking his building's tenant list online, looked into nearby firms on the third floor. I spent my evenings researching logos, team photos, staff bios, cross-referencing everything Jamie had said. And then, finally, a face. Her. Smiling, polished, confident. Sabrina, not in his department, not even in his company, but clearly in his orbit. I saved the photo. My heart beat steady. No panic, no heartbreak. Just the clarity that comes when illusion breaks clean. Now I knew her name. And I knew their rhythm. All that was left was proof. Not hearsay, not doubt. Proof that could strip every last excuse from his lips. So I circled one of the coming Mondays in gold ink, kissed him goodbye that morning, and kept my phone fully charged. That would be the night. The night I stopped guessing and started recording. I wasn't chasing closure anymore. I was building the truth, one deliberate move at a time. I arrived early. Parked 2 blocks away, in a shadowed spot where I could see the entrance without being seen. My hands were steady. It surprised me, honestly. I thought I'd be shaking, or crying, or maybe even second-guessing myself. But no, I was clear. Focused. I had a travel mug of coffee, a scarf around my neck, and a fully charged phone resting on my lap. This wasn't an ambush. It was a quiet reckoning, and I was ready. Time passed slowly, like honey dripping from a spoon. I watched employees filter out one by one, briefcases, tired eyes, small talk. But no Daniel. Not yet. My eyes scanned every face, every pair. And then I saw her, Sabrina, effortlessly elegant, walking like she owned the night. Moments later, Daniel followed, casual, loose, familiar. His hand met hers like muscle memory. No hesitation, just belonging. And right then, the camera clicked. Once, twice, again. They didn't notice me. Of course they didn't. They were wrapped up in whatever version of the truth they'd crafted together. They walked hand in hand down the block, not toward a car, not toward dinner, toward a boutique hotel, tucked between a bakery and a dry cleaner. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I filmed. A slow, steady capture. Proof. Real and undeniable, and I knew exactly what I'd do with it. But not tonight. No. Tonight I'd let him lie to me one last time. When Daniel came home later that night, he smelled like expensive soap and hotel shampoo. Not a trace of the office on him. He dropped his keys in the bowl, kissed my cheek with practiced ease, and went straight for the fridge. "Long night," he mumbled. I watched him from across the room, nodding slowly, like I believed him. My voice stayed soft. "Did the project go well?" I asked, almost kindly. He didn't flinch, didn't even pause, just said, "Yeah, productive." The ease of his lie hit harder than the betrayal itself. There was no guilt in it, no hesitation, just habit. I studied his face, memorized the angle of his smile, the way he scratched behind his ear, little details I used to love. But now, they served a different purpose. I was mapping him, learning the texture of his deceit. I responded like any wife would, a warm dinner, a gentle kiss goodnight, and a quick tuck into bed. But inside, I was already preparing the next move. In bed, I lay beside him in the dark, listening to his breathing grow heavy, calm. I stared at the ceiling, replaying everything, the way her hand slipped into his, how their bodies leaned close without thinking, like this wasn't new, like it had happened dozens of times before. That thought didn't break me. It grounded me. I had evidence now, and soon I'd decide how to use it. But the timing had to be perfect, public enough to sting, personal enough to destroy. Over the next few days, I became a master of ordinary. I laughed at his jokes, packed his gym bag, even scheduled a movie night like we used to. To him, everything felt back to normal, maybe even better. But beneath the calm, I was laying the final pieces of my trap. Timing was everything. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum or cry in the kitchen. No, I was going to set the stage, draw the curtain, and let him walk right into the spotlight. I edited the footage carefully, trimmed it down to the most damning moments. Him taking her hand, the kiss on her cheek, the hotel sign glowing gently in the background. It was quiet, elegant proof. Nothing could be twisted or denied. I saved the file under a name only I would recognize. And then I waited. Not long. Just enough to let him feel safe again. Let him believe he'd escaped. Because that's when people fall the hardest, right after they think they've won. I began planning the dinner. A simple one, intimate, just a few co-workers, a few toasts, a show of appreciation. That's what I told him. And he beamed like a man who thought he'd truly fooled the woman who knew him best. I smiled right back. The invitations went out, including one with a delicate handwritten note delivered to Sabrina's office. "I'd love for you to join us. It would mean a lot." I signed it with warmth, and she replied with a yes. The table was set with candles, linen napkins, and soft jazz playing low in the background, the kind of detail Daniel never noticed but always benefited from. I wore a deep emerald dress, one I hadn't touched in years, and poured myself a glass of wine before anyone arrived. The apartment looked perfect, smelled like rosemary chicken, and held just enough warmth to pass for hospitality. But underneath it all, there was tension stitched into every corner. My kind of tension. Daniel was in a good mood, maybe even proud. He adjusted his cufflinks in the mirror and told me I looked beautiful. I thanked him, then fixed a thread on his collar without a word. He was buzzing with that false sense of accomplishment, like this dinner party was his victory lap after months of juggling lies. He didn't suspect a thing. That made it sweeter. He poured drinks while I welcomed his co-workers, each one confused but flattered by the unexpected invite. And then she walked in. Sabrina. Slim, polished, tentative. She paused at the door, clearly thrown off. I greeted her like an old friend, arms open, voice warm. "So glad you could make it," I said, and for a split second, I saw her glance at Daniel, searching for answers in his panicked eyes. His face turned a shade I'd never seen before. It wasn't just shock. It was fear. Real fear. I offered her a seat, smiled at them both, and raised my glass. To support, to teamwork, to extra hours. The air shifted. You could feel it, that strange electricity when everyone senses something's off, but no one knows where to look. Sabrina clutched her wine glass with both hands. Daniel avoided eye contact like it burned. His co-workers chuckled nervously, unsure whether they'd just missed a joke or walked into one. I kept the conversation flowing, asking about their latest projects, praising their dedication. All the while, Daniel sat silent, unraveling thread by invisible thread. I let the evening breathe. Served dinner, topped off drinks, even complimented Sabrina's earrings. Delicate silver hoops. She smiled, unsure whether to relax or run. The room was a theater now, and I was guiding every scene. And just when the mood had settled into that fragile balance between pleasant and strange, I stood. "Before dessert," I said, "I want to show you all something. A little tribute. A memory, really." Daniel's fork clinked against his plate. He knew. I clicked the remote. The TV blinked to life. The room fell into a hush that didn't ask questions. It simply froze. And there they were, Daniel and Sabrina, hand in hand, walking like lovers under streetlight shadows. A brief kiss, the glowing hotel sign. The kind of silence that followed wasn't loud. It was sharp, like glass cracking. Sabrina stood up first, pale and trembling. "You invited me here? For this?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Sabrina left without another word, heels clicking fast against the hardwood, her breath shallow and ragged. The door shut behind her like punctuation, harsh and final. Daniel remained seated, stunned, as if his body had forgotten how to move. His co-workers didn't speak. A few glanced at each other, unsure whether to offer condolences or just get the hell out. And I? I walked to the kitchen, pulled out a manila envelope, and laid it gently on the table beside his wine glass. "Divorce papers," I said softly, almost like I was offering him dessert. "Already signed on my end. All that's missing is your truth." His lips parted, but no sound came. Just this quiet, pitiful gasp, the sound a man makes when everything he built on deception finally caves in. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back, shaking my head. "No," I said, "not tonight. Not after everything. Not when he thought this night would end in celebration." I looked at the mess of candles, wine glasses, and half-eaten food. A dinner table turned battleground. "Now," I told him with calm, precise words, "you can spend as many late nights as you want, alone." I picked up my coat from the chair, smoothed it over my shoulders, and walked out with the kind of peace that only comes after devastation. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I left him right where he belonged, in the ruins of his own lies. The first morning after I left, I woke up in a small Airbnb with mismatched curtains and sunlight pouring in through thin blinds. No one beside me. No need to make coffee for two. Just silence. Pure, whole, and unfamiliar. I sat up slowly, taking in the unfamiliar room, and for a moment I expected the ache to hit. But it didn't. What I felt instead was space, spaciousness inside my own chest, like I'd made room where shame used to live, and it felt clean. The text started early. Daniel, of course. Apologies, explanations, promises, as if language alone could stitch a broken thing back together. I didn't respond. Not to him. Not to anyone. That part of me, the responder, the fixer, the forgiver, had clocked out. Instead, I walked to a cafe nearby, ordered a cappuccino, and opened my laptop. My side business, the one I'd been building slowly between chores and disappointments, suddenly had my full attention. And it thrived. Within weeks, I moved into a small apartment with wide windows and old wooden floors that creaked with every step. I liked the sound. It reminded me I was standing on something real. I set up a desk by the window, printed out a list of goals I used to be too tired to chase. I was no longer waiting for someone to make space for me. I was creating it with my own hands. There was pain, of course, but there was pride too. A new kind. The earned kind. Some nights, I'd lie in bed with a glass of wine and scroll through old photos, vacations, anniversaries, snapshots of a life I once thought was solid. I didn't cry. Not anymore. I observed them like a historian would, curious, distant. There was a time I would have done anything to keep that life from cracking. But now I saw it differently. It hadn't cracked. It had been hollow all along. And the version of me that once held it together, she deserved a standing ovation. People started noticing. My sister, my friends, even my old neighbor who used to wave from across the lawn. They saw something in my smile that hadn't been there before. I told them the truth, piece by piece, not to gain sympathy, but to show them what survival really looks like. Sometimes survival isn't loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as making your own breakfast and enjoying the silence without guilt. I wasn't rebuilding what I had. I was building something better. Then one afternoon I posted a photo. Just me, barefoot in the sand, hair a mess, smile wide and completely unposed. The caption was simple. Turns out the only thing I needed to surprise was myself. The comments poured in. Hearts, claps, messages from women I hadn't spoken to in years. They didn't ask about Daniel. They didn't need to. They saw the story in my face, not the betrayal, the becoming, the rising, the undeniable proof that I was finally free. These days, my apartment smells like fresh coffee and eucalyptus. I keep a soft throw on the couch and music playing low in the background, mostly jazz, sometimes silence. I work from my laptop by the window, taking breaks to water the plants I used to forget. There's no tension in the air. No wondering where he is. No waiting for keys in the lock or lies in a smile. Just me. Just this. And the beautiful, brave quiet of a life I reclaimed with both hands. Daniel still tries sometimes. Emails. A forwarded song we used to love. A photo of a place we once went. But he's just another notification now, one I swipe away without reading. I don't hate him. I don't wish him harm. I just don't make room for him anymore. Not in my inbox, not in my plans, not in my heart. What he broke, I rebuilt. What he stole, I reclaimed. And what he thought was the end of me was just the start of something far better. I'm not the same woman who showed up at his office with dinner and hope. She was lovely, generous, trusting, and she deserved more, so I became more. I became the woman who sees the storm coming and plants her feet anyway, who learns that peace isn't found in someone else's promises but in her own power. And for the first time in years, I feel steady. Not because someone holds me up, but because I finally, fiercely, stand on my own.